welcome to Jurassic Park 3 Minute, where we're discussing the second Jurassic Park sequel, 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And we're back after a little bit of a spell to bring you minute 68 of Jurassic Park 3. David, it's been a couple of weeks. I've been crook with the flu, and it's just sort of getting over that now, so I might get a little bit croaky during the record, and we are climbing out of winter here, so hopefully the days get a bit warmer. You've been busy too. You were bonfiring last week. And...
Me and my dad been... we had two giant trees in our yard that were great, beautiful shade trees, and sadly they died over the winter. We had lots of ice storms over last winter, and so we had to just basically chop them down, chop them up, and now we got like 3-4 years worth of wood outside. But yeah, you being in Australia, me being in Chicago, we have a hard enough time lining up our schedules, and we just happen to both be busy over our weekends.
Yeah, and that happens. We've been trying to get episodes record ahead of time, just if we know there's going to be issues coming up with scheduling, but this time it's just I couldn't record because I couldn't talk, and and you're lighting things on fire, so...
Me chief, one big fire.
But I suppose briefly, today you attended a convention locally, and I just seen a fantastic photo of a cosplay between John Hammond and Michael Myers, which was awesome. Did you see any other Jurassic theme stuff there?
Actually, yes, they did. They had. I'm not sure if it was the guy whose booth he was selling it, but they had like ID badges and tour vehicle badges. So I bought the tour vehicle number 5 badge for my car.
Oh, lovely.
But yeah, I met a true necromancer over today. Not really. I mean, it was mostly a horror convention, so it was kind of interesting seeing him there.
Yep.
Of course, I was there dressed up as the Rob Zombie 2000 remake of Halloween, Michael Myers, and I just happened to see the guy passing by me. I'm like, hey, I got to take a picture with you.
Yeah, that's definitely maybe sometimes you see the Nedry cosplayers with the spit on them, or Arnold missing an arm, or something like more horrific sort of stuff like that. But just having John Hammond in his cane and hat walking around a horror convention, well, I suppose he did create a lot of horror now across five going into 6 films. So.
I mean, we also got to admit, the first 2 books were very, very strong in the horror themes, you know?
Yeah, it'd be funny if he had little compies hanging off him. There'd be a select few that actually understood that reference and realised it was from his definite novel. But very good.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually a pretty good cosplay. He had the white shirt, the hat, and the cane, and the white pants and all that, and he was just walking around. He actually even grew out his beard, and I'm not sure if it was an older gentleman or if he just happened to dye his beard white. But yeah, it was actually a pretty good cosplay.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest issues with a Hammond cosplay is just getting that beard right. Not being too big, having it sort of close cut.
Oh no, yeah, this was actually really closely cut. It looked real nice. Then there's me in the picture with the mask on, scowling, and it's got the rot lines all over it and the nasty, grimy coveralls.
Oh, that was you in the Michael Myers outfit.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That was me doing the. It was my first horror convention, so I wanted to dress up for it.
Oh, very nice. I have to put that photo up in the Facebook page when this episode goes up on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yep.
Lovely.
Stick to the plan. Head to the coast.
You're not going to look for Dr. Grant?
Going to the coast was Alan's idea. If he's alive, that's where he's headed.
I agree.
Before we get into 68, David, over on Jurassic-Pedia.com, I thought it was fitting for now the end of this shot of floating down the river. We got the article titled Dinosaur Riverside Landscape, or the beauty shot from Isla Sorna. Something that's been on the site for a little while now, but a little bit of a write-up of the curb here passing this glorious and wonderful area with all the herbivores grazing on it.
Yeah, this is one of those articles that I just went in and at some point just really expanded and added a photo and all that stuff. It's not really a lot to say, but you can actually see in this photo that I added to the article, the white bird in the corner, in the upper left corner of it.
I did see that.
This is the same photo I cropped for the white bird, article, and added, because it's basically like the best, one of the best shots we get of that little white bird.
Yeah, you can see the sort of little ones behind the back of the brachiosaur too, off in the distance, sort of silhouetted by the mountain. But it's just fantastic. Like this is a real spot. This is on one of the ranches in Kauai. you wouldn't be able to go there, but it'd be a great place to visit. Just imagining this Jurassic Valley.
Yeah, this was the same valley as the brachiosaurus seen from the first movie.
Yep. And it's just amazing how just turn the camera a little bit one way or the other, and in this case, come down to the river that's flowing through the ranch, and it looks similar, but it looks so different as well. Like you've got a lot of those trees, those high trees in the background, and probably just over behind there somewhere there's a little track that Jeep drove down along in the lagoon. I wonder if this might even come into the back of that lagoon that the brachiosaurs and that all come out of at the end of that scene too.
Something I do like about the scene, though, in general, is how the crepuscular rays, you can just see the sun rays peeking through the clouds, and it's like, ah!
Yeah, it definitely reminds me of that fan art someone done when Richard Attenborough died, and it sort of got Hammond in the visitor centre and just the animals and the rays coming down through the clouds.
Yeah.
It's probably, we don't really get this shot in any of the other films too. It's sort of unique to this film, into this shot here where we get those sun streaking rays through the clouds.
Yeah, we don't actually get it like in the Lost World. We get the sun shining through the clouds of dust, but we don't actually get the sun shining through the clouds or anything like this at all in any of the other movies. So, like you said, it's very unique.
I think the only other thing we sort of get is just the streak of rays coming through the jungle, through foliage, or we've seen it earlier in this film as we're sort of approaching some of that nighttime stuff, or late afternoon. I know in Fallen Kingdom 2 we get it a few times when we're in the jungle and you get the sun sort of streaking through the Blue's Nest and that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the bones will still be there when we get back. It's a great thing about bones, they never run away.
Alright, ready to get into minute 68.
Yeah.
As we enter minute 67 of Jurassic Park 3, we had a glorious shot of an Isla Sorna valley and several herbivores grazing by the river. As we open on minute 68, Eric looks at Grant and says, "You know something? Billy was right." And Grant just smiles. At the 15-second mark, we cut back to the bank, looking over the boat, as four of the large brachiosaurs lumber over and start dropping their heads down, looking at the new arrivals. At the 24-second mark, we cut to night time, as the boat slowly chugs down the river. Grant standing on the side with his hands on his hips, impatient and looking for danger. At the 31-second mark, we cut to Paul as he suddenly hears something and kills the motor and steps out of the centre console and tells the others to listen. Almost instantly, we hear the familiar jingle of Kirby Paint and Tile Plus coming from Paul's satellite phone. The barge slowly drifts downriver towards a clearing as the ringing gets louder and everyone's tense, waiting for the Spinosaur to make its move. At the 52-second mark, the boat moves downriver far enough that everyone can see inside the clearing, and three large steaming piles of crap are sitting on the ground. And as the minute ends, Grant leaps from the boat, yelling "Find it" before it stops ringing. Paul and Amanda follow, but as she does, Amanda yells back to Eric to stay on the boat. As we continue this week into minute 68, we get that JP theme playing as it's reaching its end, and that male brachiosaur is sort of just walking over and approaching the boat and bringing that big head down for a bit of a closer look. And here we get a real good look at that real red colour on the top as well. But
yeah, we see the camera pan up from the characters standing at basically the feet of the brachiosaurs, and then the zoom in at the head, and then the fade cut. It's actually a pretty good. It's actually a pretty good pan because it just shows you the immense scale and mass of these animals.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, definitely. This little boat floating down the river and these big animals coming over nearby on the riverbank. But it's sort of odd here. The lighting is a little bit of an issue here because as you're looking at the brachiosaur, you can see that sun shining down from behind them. And then each time we cut to Eric and Grant in the boat, like there's no sun on them whatsoever.
Yeah, the sun's just kind of fading there with the heavy blue shadows.
Yeah. And we do get a cut to Alan and Eric says, "You know something, Dr. Grant? Billy was right," which Grant pretty much acknowledges in the script and the novel that he couldn't hate Billy for wanting to see all this, and he sort of deep down is glad he's here to see it again as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just as the scene ends, we get two more heads sort of join the male. We get those other two brachiosaurs that were walking along, sort of all drop their heads down for a closer look, and that's when we transition into nighttime. And it's great, you can hear the insects and the frogs and just the sound of the jungle at night, which I absolutely love.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm sure it sounds a lot like I have my window open right now, and I can hear the insects and the cicadas and the crickets all chirping outside. It's late summer.
I wasn't going to mention it, but it does add some nice ambience to the background.
It really does.
Yep.
It really does.
Yep. But we got Grant standing on the side of the boat, and they send a little console lights on as Paul's driving, concentrating on the boat as it chugs along, and then something gets his attention, and he cuts the engine and says, "Listen," which it's odd. He's the only one that hears it. I'm gonna say he's probably the oldest one on the boat, and he's got better hearing than Eric, Grant, and Amanda. But maybe because it's his jingle, he's probably heard it the most if it's his satellite phone and that.
Mm-hmm.
But we, all of a sudden, as he says, "Listen," we get that ringtone that just suddenly comes through really loudly, and it does make you wonder how no one else heard it over the sound of the boat engines. But Paul and Eric are seated inside. Amanda and Eric are seated inside the cage in the front of the boat, and the cage door is open, resting back on the top of the cage, which is sort of interesting there. It's sort of taking shelter in the cage just in case something happens. I wonder if that was Grant's idea of just. Yeah. You don't need to be out on the boat, just get in there, and if something happens, we can close the cage door and be secure inside.
Yeah, but it's interesting, because the shot that we see it's basically just a small break in the trees that we see zooming in here at this after they clamber into the cage. It doesn't even look like it's nearly enough size to be, because the next shot, because then we get a cut back to Eric and Amanda, and then we cut back to the scene and we see those are three big piles of shit.
Yeah, it's sort of maybe just the perspective from the water, where we're looking sort of more downstream and directly at the bank, and there is a bigger clearing off the bank, but there's still some trees near the bank's edge. But it's sort of interesting because we know from previous times whenever we hear that phone jingle, it's a Spinosaur, and it's a shame there's no mention of it here. We do get it later on in the novel that Eric sort of mouths Spinosaurus as they draw closer and can hear the rigging, but as they do slowly drift downstream, we get that phone getting louder and louder as they stand on the side of the boat, and there's no attempt to move away. Paul sort of cuts the engines and just lets the boat sort of glide through the water, but they know what happened last time the Spinosaur was there. I don't think just drifting past quietly is gonna save them if the animal was here just off screen.
Mm.
But yeah, as you said, with that we get the big steaming piles of crap, and as the minute ends, the sort of boat drifts in, and Grant yells to find it before it stops ringing as Paul and Amanda leap from the boat after him. But the boat itself sort of just keeps on floating and eventually comes to rest on the bank, which it's sort of lucky that's the direction they were pointing in when they killed the engines. And as we get to the script and that later, it's sort of they just jump out of the boat and swim to shore. It's not, the boat doesn't actually stop and it just keeps on heading downstream. But it's sort of, again, if the Spinosaur was here, they would have drifted straight up to the bank where it would have been using the toilet.
And why is there, I'm just curious why there's like three piles and not one big one?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, those are big piles anyway. But I mean, is it like a latrine animal, or are those like? Because they're all steaming piles.
They're fresh.
Yeah, they are fresh, and so, did Nash just give him diarrhea or what?
well, we can talk more about that next minute, because even here we are a full day afterwards, and just what's left of Nash, and would there be anything left of Nash, etc. But I'm just trying to think back to Jurassic Park. I'm pretty sure that big pile of shit wasn't the only one.
I always kind of felt like that was implied because Jerry Harding says that we know that they're herd animals from the book, and even if you still didn't read the book, Harding says that the herd comes around the area every 6 weeks, and I just assumed that was from the herd, you know?
Well, I suppose too, because Malcolm does take his glasses off at that real big one, and we pan past that or we zoom back past that one to Sarah Sarah. Oh, this is great. To Ellie at the smaller one, which does seem to be more fresher. So yeah, that could be the case. But these ones all seem to be fresh here, and as you said, steaming. So yeah, don't know. Maybe just the metal, metal and clothing that it ingested may have upset its stomach a bit.
Mm. We'll talk more about the contents with therein next week, because there are a couple issues with what's there and what's not, you know?
Yeah. And maybe consistency as well.
Yeah.
But briefly looking at the script and novel comparisons, we get the description in the script that a full moon passes behind clouds, thunder quietly rumbles, and a lightning flickers in the distance, which I just love that setup that, yes, here we are again. Third film in, not so much the halfway point.